For this video, I'm going to be talking about The Last Exorcism. Now, this is a movie that came out 2010. It was directed by Daniel Stamm and produced by Eli Roth. So Eli Roth definitely got the hype going for this movie, needless to say. It's garnered mixed opinions from people since its release, but I've always kind of maintained that it is one of the best horror movies to come out in quite some time. At least, one of the best, bigger, mainstream, or however way you put it, horror movies. Which I know maybe a lot of people wouldn't agree with, but I think it's an excellent film. I really do. I think this is just fantastic, this movie. Really, I mean, it takes kind of what's become a horror genre and took something that I didn't really like the found footage kind of stuff, and I think it does a good job of making it its own. Because basically, I mean, what this movie is, it stars the preacher, Cotton Marcus. He's played brilliantly by Patrick Fabian. Great in his role, truly great. As this preacher who is quite well known for performing exorcisms. Ever since, as a little kid, he was always raised to be a preacher, son of a preacher. Great at what he does, really commands the crowd. And it's about essentially him exposing exorcism. And so it's not like, say, one of those found footage camera movies where it's like, hey, I'm going to take my camera and film it. No, it's the premise for this movie is that it is a documentary film crew who want to film this story and assist with them. So they're both, helping each other out. So he's going to expose this exorcism kind of stuff for kind of fraud, as he puts it. And they have an interesting documentary. So win-win, basically. And his reasons behind it are noble, are good with their intentions. Essentially just because, he's grown more mature as a person. And he knows that people who truly believe in exorcism may attempt it themselves, may seek out exorcists, and it could cause very serious damage, which he has been made aware of in certain news stories. And he, as a kid himself, now he heard about a kid around his son's age who was killed. So it's bugging him, and kind of what the movie is. I mean, this character. I mean, it's the Reverend Marcus character, a lot more interesting of a character than what's usually allowed in these types of movies. To be perfectly honest, I mean, literally within the first 5 minutes of this movie, we get more information on this character and more kind of hooks on this character, things that kind of like capture your attention a little bit, that make you go, okay, yeah, I'm interested in this character. Then you'll see in like any Paranormal Activity movie for sure. Not that they should necessarily be compared, but they're both found footage, whatever. So he is an interesting character, and kind of what it is, it's him struggling with his faith somewhat, or not even so much a struggle, because I mean that is kind of something that we see in so many movies too. The priest who's unsure of his faith. You see that From Dusk Till Dawn, The Exorcist, obviously, Signs, even. So, I mean, that's kind of a cliche in and of itself. But, I mean, what's interesting about this character, one, there's no tragedy that incites this. Like, oh, his wife didn't die. It's just, he's almost come to accept his lack of faith anymore, but he still does his preaching because he's good at it. That's the thing. He's been raised this way. That's all he knows. So he's this preacher. He's this part-time exorcist as well, and he's good at it. He's a showman. He can capture the crowd's attention, so much so that he does at the beginning. He's like, oh, I'll bet you $10 that I can work in my mom's banana bread recipe into a sermon. No one's gonna notice. And then he does, and everyone is like, hallelujah. So that's kind of funny. But I mean, he's come to terms with that almost, that he's somewhat, I guess, lost his faith, but he's good at it, and it's good money too. He makes money off these exorcisms, obviously. So there's that. So that's pretty good. So basically, I mean, what this documentary is he's going to expose his last exorcism. So he's not in the business anymore. He's going to do the last one. So he's brought to to this somewhat secluded farm in Georgia, I believe. Yeah, the state is Georgia, where there's a father and there's a son, and the daughter is supposedly possessed by an evil spirit of some kind. So the father is the one who's concerned. Uh, he wrote a letter and he's like, "Hey, come here, help me," blah blah blah, that kind of stuff. And the girl, or Nell, I should say, uh, played by Michael Cera, is really great in the role. He's in drag, and she seems like a normal kind of girl, like an innocent kind of girl. She is, religious, and she's homeschooled, so she's kind of isolated, kind of sheltered, overprotected than her father would, admit to. But there's something going on. Livestock is being killed. Strange things that are happening, and they can't quite explain it. So Marcus kind of pretty much knows the drill, that there are other factors at play here. There's always psychological, emotional factors. Her mother had died. She's, growing into a woman. So, I mean, there's so many factors at play here that, kind of come to light. So he wants to expose the fraud of exorcism. So he kind of shows how he does the little tricks, like how he makes pictures on the wall kind of shake, and the smoke come out of the crucifix and things like that. So he does all that. But then, I mean, it takes an interesting turn. That's really just kind of the first chapter of the movie, where the premise is. So it takes a more interesting turn. Not that I'm going to describe the whole movie. I feel like that's what I've been doing for the past 5 minutes, just describing the movie. But it does take interesting turns where the viewer would ultimately kind of question what exactly is going on. Is there, something that's of a paranormal nature, of a demonic nature that's going on? Or is there something more earthly, as Marcus puts it, more earthly? And kind of what it gets into. It does turn into kind of a thriller where it does get quite tense. You have Marcus and the documentary film crew slowly coming to realize that the father's possibly abusive, possibly has sexually abused her on numerous occasions, and is blaming the devil or what have you. So it becomes very tense there, because obviously, I mean, he's kind of old school. He has the shotgun. He's like, if argues with them frequently. If they don't think the way he wants them to think, like, oh yes, it's definitely an exorcism is needed here, definitely a demon, that kind of stuff. So it becomes a little bit tense in that respect, because the father feels unpredictable. Also, the son, he's quite unpredictable as well. He knows their their game. He knows that they're frauds. So that's brings things to kind of a point. But at the same time, you're kind of wondering, okay, so something's got to be going on here. So it kind of delves a little bit deeper into to that area, and yeah, I mean, as say a found footage film, I mean, it didn't even necessarily have to be one, but I do think it used that concept to its advantage. It makes it interesting that they are filming this documentary. Feels like there's actually a purpose for them filming this stuff, and like 9 out of 10 found footage horror movies, like, put down the fucking camera, will you? No, but here they're filming a documentary. Yeah, it's getting a little tense, but they still got a job to do, whatever. So you can kind of chop it up to that. Yes, they add musical score to help the scares a little bit, but it works in what it does. But I wouldn't say this feels as if I'm watching something that's real, right? So I can understand that it's a scripted movie, but that's fine. In fact, I think that's even better. At least there is a script. At least there are themes to the plot that they deal with here. At least there is character development, and there is a character arc with the Cotton Marcus character. There sincerely is, and I found that all very interesting. And you don't see too many movies, at least not anymore, kind of tackle religion so much, and I don't think it really says good or bad about religion necessarily. It does show good things and bad things about certain aspects of it. Definitely, one of the aspects of this film is fundamentalism and the dangers that can come from it. But it also shows positive aspects of religion and of faith and family and things like that. So, I mean, it takes sort of a middle ground there, so I don't think it is an anti-religion movie or pro-religion movie necessarily. It just uses religion as kind of a driving force to present the horror, which is really what it's all about. So yeah, I mean, I like it. I like its provocative kind of nature. And yeah, I'll say, well, this will get into spoilers here, but I think uh, one huge aspect of the film, and one thing you're going to hear a lot of people say, ending is horrible. Mm, uh, I would say the ending isn't ideal, but I think it's a fine ending. I think it's an okay ending. I think it works. Basically, when all is said and done, yeah, we're kind of wondering, is this paranormal? Is this real? The film arrives at, yeah, okay, it's real. It's not supernatural. This is just a troubled girl, and she got pregnant from uh, someone within her church group, and she was suffering from shame. Basically, that was basically it. And that was an interesting conclusion. But then they twist that. So there's a good twist, and they realize, that that wasn't the case, and that something else is going on. And the ending is a little bit vague. It's a little bit, but the Cotton Marcus and the documentary crew, they happen upon this cult, which is called to earlier in the film. Like, you hear one of the interviewees mention in passing, oh yeah, there's a lot of cults here and things like that. So it's not completely out of nowhere, but you see that there were people who were conspiring the whole time. Father was not in on it. Father was a victim, just as now the daughter is. And so you see like this ritual taking place, this satanic ritual, this demonic baby coming out, fire, everything like that. Um, so I didn't think it was too bad. I thought it was all right, and of course, it kind of ends with like the cameraman's head getting cut off. Basically, you don't see the head like roll away, but you see, it was foretold in a picture that Nell drew. So you see, camera fall down, kind of holds on some stagnant image or whatever, like all these movies do. But you don't necessarily know that everybody dies. Reverend Marcus, I don't know if he quite dies. But that's kind of what I like about the movie. One, I'm not entirely sure if he did die, which, maybe some happened, maybe some didn't. But, it at least makes a stance on where it is with supernatural versus earthly, basically. So it makes a defiant stance. So it doesn't do, like, say something The Exorcism of Emily Rose did, which was a good movie, but it was like, draw your own conclusions. Was it supernatural, or did she have a medical condition? What do you think? So I think that's kind of a cheat. I mean, it is and it isn't. I mean, it just depends on if you liked it or not. I mean, Exorcism of Emily Rose, fine movie. I'll say that, but it takes too much of a ambiguous stand on whether or not it's supernatural or not, which it kind of left me a little unsatisfied. This, at least, as ridiculous as the ending might have been, it took a stance on that, and more importantly, it did bring Marcus's character arc full circle. You see him kind of having lost his faith, but in those last moments when you see him going up to the fire, holding up the crucifix, you know that he believes. So this experience has brought him to, redemption in some kind of way. So I think that's good. I like that. And again, Patrick Fabian's performance, just excellent. I think he's terrific in this movie. I sincerely do. So there's all that, and I like that. So, I mean, I can understand where someone may come from if they say the ending is shitty, but at least there was that. So I appreciate that. Um, and so, ultimately, I think it is a really good movie, a great movie. In fact, again, I'll say it's one of my favorite horror movies of recent years. It is scary, it is provocative, and it feels like a written movie, which is fine. You can write the movie. You don't have to have complete blank and then boom, jump scare. Fine, you can put in music to help the scares. That's fine. I mean, I know I'm watching something scripted anyway, so I don't have to trick myself into believing I'm watching something real if what is shown to me works. And this movie works. It works extremely well, fantastically. I think this is a great horror movie. I really do. I have not seen the sequel. I hear it's very bad, so I will avoid that at all costs. But this is one of my favorite horror movies of recent years. So that'll be my review of The Last Exorcism. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.